welcome to the Deep Dive. We dig into the sources, the articles, the research, and pull out the key insights, the nuggets of knowledge for you.
And today we're jumping into a really fascinating story. It's about ambition, it's about innovation, and this intense but also weirdly friendly competition, a story that really changed things for a continent.
Absolutely. We're looking at two names that, well, they didn't just shake up finance in Africa. They've become symbols, really, of what's possible. Paystack and Flutterwave.
Exactly. And if you're interested in business strategy, their journey is it's basically a masterclass. So much to learn there.
Okay, picture this. It's October 2022. You're in Esso Villa, Abuja, Nigeria. The president's there giving out national honors. The Order of the Niger, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a very prestigious award.
And standing side by side, you've got these two young tech guys, Shola Akinlaid from Paystack and Olubenga Agboola, everyone calls him GB, from Flutterwave.
Yeah, they get their names called, accept the medals for advancing technology and finance. There's this quiet nod between them. It's a great moment.
A moment of shared glory, yeah. But underneath it, there's this rivalry, right? A rivalry that, it fundamentally shaped Fintech across Africa.
Absolutely. Because just a few years before that moment, these two startups were like racing neck and neck. Both wanted to be the Stripe of Africa, Stripe, the big global standard for online payments.
And how they got there, their paths were so different. Paystack. Well, they ended up being bought by Stripe itself. Huge deal, like $200 million.
A landmark moment, really. Well, Flutterwave, they took this completely independent route, blazed their own trail, hit a multi-billion-dollar valuation, became a proper African unicorn.
So the big question we're asking today, for you listening, is how? How did these two giants get from, a payment system that was completely broken to standing there as national heroes?
And what can their journeys so different, yet both incredibly successful, teach us about building businesses? Especially in these fast-moving emerging markets.
Right, because to really get it, you have to go back. Think about Nigeria, mid-2010s, trying to pay for something online. It was, honestly, a nightmare.
Oh, totally. Clunky websites, fees that made no sense, transactions just failing half the time. Most people didn't even bother. They just paid cash. That's the problem they decided to fix.
Now, quick disclaimer here. We can't know every single detail, every private chat. But this deep dive, it's put together carefully from public sources, news, statements, records. We're aiming for the most accurate, compelling story possible based on what's out there.
Okay, so let's dig in. Let's go back to the start. Act I, the origins. How did these guys even, spot the problem and think, okay, we can fix this?
It kicks off in Lagos 2015. There's this buzz, right? E-commerce is trying to happen, but payments are just this massive roadblock.
Mm-hmm. And you find Shola Akinlaid, talented software engineer in this little office in Yaba. Like lots of people, he'd felt the pain of trying to pay online himself.
He's tinkering away on his laptop, and then, boom, this aha moment. Runs a test. Green success message pops up. He's just figured out he can charge a credit card online with a pretty simple script.
You can almost picture it, right? And the first thing he does, he calls Ezra Olubi, his buddy from university, this sort of eccentric coding genius.
Gets him on the phone, super excited. Ezra, I just wrote a script to charge a card. It actually worked.
And Ezra, apparently quick as a whip, just replies something like, welcome to 2015, Shola. Stripe's been doing that for years.
But that's the point, right? That sharpens Shola's big question, the one that basically became Paystack's mission. Exactly. Why don't we have that here? Why can't Nigerian businesses have decent payment tools too?
And that simple question, that frustration, that was the seed. The vision for Paystack. A platform to make online payments, well, dead simple. Clean APIs for African businesses. Ezra was on board. They were going to build the Stripe of Africa.
Okay, but at the same time, pretty much across town, there's another brilliant guy wrestling with an even bigger version of this payment mess.
Right. Inalua Aboyeji, known as E. Only 25, a co-founder of Andela, the company training African developers. Super impressive guy, already raised money from Mark Zuckerberg.
But he was incredibly frustrated. Why?
Because of the nightmare of actually paying his developers. They were in different African countries, each with its own banks, its own mobile money, its own rules. It was a logistical headache. How do you connect all that fragmentation?
So he seeks out Olubenga Agboola GB, a Lagos-born engineer, early 30s, but already had this amazing resume, PayPal, Google in the U.S., plus deep experience building tech for Nigerian banks.
The perfect guy, really. Bridging Silicon Valley smarts with the reality on the ground in Africa.
So Ian meets GB, lays it out. GB, Africa needs its own infrastructure. Paying people at Andela across borders, it's madness. The U.S. has it easy. Here, every country is different.
And GB, having seen how smooth things could be in the Valley, he instantly got it. He saw the potential for something unified.
Ian's vision was huge. One API, any merchant anywhere in Africa plugs in, processes payments like a local everywhere. And just like that, 2016, Flutterwave is born, literally sketched out on a napkin.
Their goal was incredibly ambitious. Not just Africa's Stripe, but actually unifying all these fragmented systems. Ian had the vision, the investor network. GB had the serious engineering skills, and crucially, those banking connections. New people at the central bank, even. Adelik Adekoya was also involved early on.
Okay, so right there, you see the initial difference, don't you? Paystack starts laser-focused on Nigeria, make local payments easy. Flutterwave, they're aiming for the whole continent from day one, connect everything.
Two incredibly powerful ideas taking shape at the same time, and their stories were about to get seriously intertwined.
They really were. Let's move into Act 2, the rise of the friendly rivals. So, Paystack, late 2015, their simple demo gets noticed by Y Combinator, the big Silicon Valley accelerator.
Huge moment. Getting to YC's winter 2016 batch, Shola flies out to San Francisco. Suddenly, Paystack is one of the very first Nigerian startups in YC. Massive credibility boost.
And while he's there, he actually meets Patrick Collison, CEO of Stripe, the company they were trying to emulate.
Yeah, apparently Shola explained the struggles businesses faced back home, how Paystack's API could unlock things. Collison pointed out Africa's huge population, saying if Paystack could figure out how to move money and commerce around, it's going to change lives, change the continent. That YC demo day pitch, it worked. Got them crucial seed funding.
Flutterwave, as you said, wasn't far behind at all. Mid-2016, just a few months after Paystack finished YC, Flutterwave launched.
And they got attention fast. August 2016, they get into Y Combinator 2, the summer 16 batch.
Wow, back to back.
Right. Yain and GB head out there. Apparently, the YC partners were just blown away by the sheer scale of their Pan-African vision. By end of 2016, Flutterwave had seed funding, key partnerships. They were boasting that with their one API, a merchant could take all payment types, cards, bank transfers, mobile money across multiple countries.
Okay, so 2017 rolls around. Both are gaining steam. You can imagine merchants and Legos comparing notes, right? Paystack or Flutterwave.
Exactly. Both were way better than the old options. Paystack was signing up hundreds of small businesses quickly. Simple sign-up, reliable processing.
Flutterwave, though, they seem to be aiming for the bigger players, multinationals, big e-commerce sites needing cross-border stuff.
That was their angle. And here's a key moment. Think about Uber in Nigeria, 2017. They hit a wall. New regulations made processing local card payments really difficult. Their growth stalled.
Ouch, that's a big problem for Uber.
Huge. And Flutterwave sees an opening. GB Agbula, apparently very calm, goes to the Uber execs and says, basically, we have a solution. We'll partner with Access Bank, handle your local payments. Riders can pay with cards or bank accounts seamlessly.
That sounds like a massive gamble for a young startup.
It was. But GB, leveraging his banking credibility, just wouldn't take no for an answer. And guess what? It worked. Flutterwave got Uber's cashless rides back online in Lagos, helped Uber's growth explode again.
Wow. So that Uber deal wasn't just a big client?
No, it was way more. It showed Flutterwave could handle complex, regulated cross-border stuff by using strategic bank partnerships. A totally different play from Paystack's focus on developers. Uber became this flagship client across Africa for them. Huge validation.
Meanwhile, Paystack wasn't sleeping. Shola and Ezra were doubling down on developer experience, on customer trust.
Totally. Transparent pricing, really fast settlement times, and they even made it possible for unregistered small businesses to accept payments. That was unheard of back then. Getting a merchant account was notoriously hard.
So they were really serving that small business startup community.
Deeply. By mid-2018, Paystack was processing something like over $27 million a month. Thousands of Nigerian entrepreneurs were relying on them. Their whole culture, transparency, kindness, high standards, it really connected.
It's interesting, though, despite these different paths, they seem to have this genuinely friendly relationship.
Yeah, the Lagos tech scene is famously tight-knit. Success for one felt like success for everyone, in a way. You'd see Shola and GB on the same conference stages, saying nice things about each other's work. Shola often said, "We're all expanding the market."
Which was true. The whole fintech pie was getting bigger fast.
Absolutely. But, let's be real. Behind the scenes, friendly, yes. But it was still a race. Who's going to land the next Uber? Who's expanding to Ghana first? Whose funding round is bigger? They were definitely keeping an eye on each other. Probably pushed each other harder because of it.
That makes sense. Friendly pressure. And by 2018, things were heating up on the investor front too, right?
Oh, yeah. Global investors were paying serious attention. Stripe itself was watching Paystack closely. And big names like Visa, MasterCard, Tencent, they were looking at Flutterwave's Pan-African play.
Which brings us neatly to Act 3, the fork in the road, acquisition versus independence.
Exactly. August 2018, huge news. Stripe leaves an $8 million series around in Paystack. Visa and Tencent actually joined that round, too. It was this massive stamp of approval.
Basically, Stripe saying, yeah, these guys are the real deal for Africa.
Pretty much. And internally, the two companies started working even closer. They found they had this strong cultural DNA in common. Paystack kept growing, expanding into Ghana, Kenya, South Africa.
Flutterwave wasn't standing still either, were they?
Not at all. They'd raised their Series A back in 2017, Series B by 2018, pulling in tens of millions from big global VCs. They were expanding like crazy. Kenya, Uganda, South Africa. By 2019, they were powering payments in like over 10 African countries. Had clients like TransferWise, Booking.com, besides Uber.
And this is around when Ian Aboyeji stepped down as CEO, right?
Yeah, in 2018, he left to start new things, and GB Agboola took the helm fully, steered Flutterwave with this relentless energy. The team got much bigger as they chased every opportunity.
Okay, so both are scaling rapidly. Then comes the massive divergence, October 2020.
The big one. Rumors start flying. Stripe had been talking to Paystack about an acquisition for a while. That close relationship was heading towards something huge.
$200 million plus. That was a reported number.
Yeah. Imagine being Shola and Ezra. What a decision. Shola had always talked about being in it for the long haul, but this offer from Stripe, they could just supercharge their impact, right? He later said they realized they could accomplish a lot more faster by joining forces.
And then the news officially breaks. Stripe acquires Paystack. Over $200 million. One of the biggest African tech exits ever.
A total watershed moment. The Nigerian tech scene just exploded with pride. The Stripe of Africa literally became part of Stripe.
Okay, so Paystack gets acquired. What's happening over at Flutterwave? GB Agboola and his team are watching this unfold.
For sure. There was genuine happiness for their friends at Paystack, definitely. But, people naturally started asking questions. Paystack cashed out. Flutterwave's still independent. What's the plan?
Did they feel pressure to sell too?
Apparently, GB got a call from a board member that very day asking exactly that. Should they look for offers? And GB's response was firm. Something like, no, we double down. This ecosystem is just starting. Flutterwave can be way bigger. We're aiming for an IPO, not a sale. We want to build a generational company for Africa.
Wow, that's a powerful moment. Seeing Paystack's exit not as competition winning, but as validation. Fuel even.
Exactly. It proved the whole African fintech space was valuable, that global players were serious. So the friendly rivalry enters a new phase. One company now has Stripe's massive resources. The other is about to go raise one of the biggest funding rounds Africa had ever seen.
Which takes us straight into Act 4, unicorns, challenges, and enduring respect.
Right. Early 2021, just a few months after the Paystack deal closes, Flutterwave makes its big move. March 2021, they announced $170 million in Series C funding. Valuation, over $1 billion.
Boom. Africa has a new unicorn.
And suddenly, GB Agboola is everywhere. Fortune's 40, under 40, time next to 100 leaders. Gets that ON medal from the Nigerian president we mentioned earlier. He's on the global stage.
And Flutterwave, the company, just keeps expanding.
Aggressively. By 2024, they're in over 34 African countries. They launch new stuff too. Flutterwave store for e-commerce during the pandemic, send for remittances. Then February 2022, another huge round. $250 million Series D valuation hits over $3 billion.
Making it the most valuable African startup at that time. Incredible rise.
Truly meteoric. Meanwhile, Paystack, now part of Stripe, is quieter. No splashy funding announcements, obviously, but they're executing steadily.
Still focused, just under the Stripe umbrella.
Exactly. Integrated into Stripe's big mission. Increase the GDP of the internet. They opened an office in South Africa. Importantly, they became the first payment gateway in Nigeria to support Apple Pay. Shola stayed in charge, keeping that local focus, but now with Stripe's global tech power behind him.
So by 2022, you really have this stark contrast. Paystack, acquired, strategic, maybe the tortoise in the race, Flutterwave.
Yeah.
Independent, super aggressive, definitely the hare.
A good analogy. But like all good stories, especially involving rapid growth, there was turbulence ahead for the hare.
There certainly was. Mid-2022, Flutterwave hit serious trouble in Kenya. Around $52 million in their accounts gets frozen. There are probes into suspicious transactions.
Yeah, that was a tough period. People started wondering, had they grown too fast, maybe cut some corners on compliance.
How do they handle it?
GB and the team denied any wrongdoing pretty forcefully. They worked intensely with the regulators, and eventually, early 2023, the Kenyan authorities actually withdrew the case, released the funds, cleared them effectively.
Must have been a massive relief, but also a wake-up call.
A huge wake-up call about just how complex it is operating across so many different African regulatory environments. It really forced them to double down on compliance and resilience.
Did they make changes?
Significant ones. They really overhauled their compliance systems, started working much more proactively with regulators, like co-launching a cybersecurity center with Nigeria's EFCC in 2024. It showed they learned that hypergrowth needs rock-solid governance.
That wasn't the only challenge, though, was it? There were internal issues, too.
Right. Around the same time, some former employees came forward with accusations about internal culture issues, harassment, stock options, things you sometimes hear about in hypergrowth startups that maybe haven't matured their internal processes as fast as their business grew.
How did GB respond to that?
He acknowledged the issues, promised reforms, and stated that individuals responsible had been dealt with. Then, almost piling on, there was a security incident. Early 2023, hackers tried to siphon funds. Flutterwave denied customer losses, but it highlighted ongoing risks.
So a really challenging period.
Definitely. But through it all, Flutterwave just kept going. Resilience became a key part of their story. GB tends to frame these things as, the hard parts of solving big problems.
And what about the relationship with Paystack during all this? Did the rivalry turn sour?
Remarkably, no. The mutual respect seemed to hold. Apparently, Shola privately reached out to GB during the Kenya crisis, offered help, contacts on the ground.
That's interesting.
And when Paystack launched Apple Pay, GB publicly congratulated them. They rarely attack each other in public. If anything, they complement each other more often than not.
Yeah, I've heard lots of businesses use both. Paystack for local, Flutterwave for Pan-African, or maybe the other way around.
Exactly. It's that frenemy dynamic. Competitors, sure, chasing some of the same business, but also allies in building the whole ecosystem. They both know the real fight isn't against each other. It's against cash, against clunky old banking systems. Like Shola said, the goal is transforming the continent, not just winning.
Which brings us perfectly to the legacy and what's next. Act V, if you will.
Yeah.
It's 2025 now. Looking back, it's clear they've fundamentally changed how business gets done in Africa.
Irreversibly. They proved that world-class tech, world-class fintech can absolutely come out of Nigeria and scale. And yeah, the rivalry pushed them both. But ultimately, they both found huge success, just down different roads.
And that Stripe of Africa title they both chased. It's almost poetic how it turned out. Africa kind of got two versions.
It really did. Paystack literally joined Stripe's global mission, aiming to boost commerce across Africa from within that powerhouse.
While Flutterwave built its own empire, an African-born, Stripe-like powerhouse, connecting payments from Cape Town to Cairo.
It's fascinating for anyone starting a business, isn't it? The choice. Get acquired for resources and stability, or go independent, take more risks, but maybe build something truly homegrown and massive.
Both paths injected massive confidence into African tech, showed that global players are interested and local startups can achieve huge valuations independently.
And the founders. Their stories keep evolving. Shola Akinlade is still leading Paystack within Stripe, a key executive driving their African strategy, also mentoring younger founders.
Right, and then there's his passion project football, founding Sporting Lagos FC, investing in a European club. It's about community building, giving back, creating pathways for Nigerian talent. That's part of his legacy, too.
And GB Agbula. He's steering Flutterwave towards that potential IPO. It's been rumored for a while now. Yeah, if or when that happens, it could be a landmark moment. Maybe Africa's first big tech unicorn listing on a major global exchange. Imagine the inspiration for entrepreneurs everywhere. GB's profile is huge, now vice chair at the U.S. Africa Business Center, but friends say he's still fundamentally an engineer at heart.
So wrapping this up, what are the big takeaways for, say, an aspiring strategist listening to this?
Oh, so many. The power of finding a real painful problem and just solving it. The need for big, bold vision, those critical strategic forks in the road, acquisition or independence, the sheer resilience required to push through tough times, and maybe, just maybe, the unexpected power of having a really strong frenemy.
Their journeys, really, from just trying to fix payments to building these huge companies, it shows the real winner. At the end of the day, is the continent they wanted to serve.
Absolutely. Let's loop back to that awards ceremony, 2022. Shola and GB, medals on, sharing that quiet moment. You can imagine Shola smiling, saying, "Not bad for two guys who just wanted to fix payments, eh?"
And GB laughing, replying, "Not bad at all, and we're just getting started."
That story proves that. But it also leaves you thinking, doesn't it? What other huge, seemingly unfixable problems are out there, especially in emerging markets, just waiting for their own pair of transformers rivals, their own frenemies to come along and change everything?
You've been listening to Empire and Legacy, African Business Chronicles. Our hosts are Zuri Mwangi and Kwame Adeyemi. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us on LinkedIn, WhatsApp, X, Instagram, and YouTube. All links are in the show notes. Subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast platform, and share this episode with fellow business leaders. Main episodes are released each Monday. Our hosts delve deeper into the CEOs at the helm on Wednesdays. On Thursdays, we explore the global perspectives, the standout businesses and CEOs, emerging trends, and geopolitical developments, presenting both risk and opportunity. We're back each week, sharing more stories about the exciting business rivalries shaping the future of business across Africa. Empire and Legacy is essential listening for business professionals and leaders. Be sure to subscribe to be the first to know when new episodes are released. Until next time, stay tuned.